Welcome to another episode of Steven Study with your host here, Steven. You can follow me on Twitter at StevenPG3. You can also follow my YouTube channel at StevenPG3 as well. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to PHNX Sports YouTube channel where you can find all of my content as well as our pregame, postgame, and daily shows that we do throughout the week with the Suns, as well as every other professional sports team in Arizona. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the film, looking at the Suns defending against Cade Cunningham and the Detroit Pistons. In this game, Cade Cunningham had 20 points on 26 shots and shot 1 for 7 from 3. Now, the Pistons themselves shot fairly solid compared to their standards from the three-point line as a team, but obviously the main piece that was in their crosshairs for the Suns and their defensive game plan was Cade Cunningham. And it felt like this was one of the better jobs they did in terms of taking away the primary option from an opponent, dictating to them where their shots and where their general touches were going to take place at, and then defending around that to keep them from getting to the spots that they like to get to. So we're going to go ahead and dive into the film looking at a handful of those things. And consistently tied to the plot is going to be Ryan Dunn, who was tasked with guarding Cade Cunningham in this matchup. But also we saw plenty of Nick Richards in this one as well. So going to go ahead and dive into the film now, and you'll see exactly what I'm getting to with the early theme being set. So starting action here off the ball, you see Cade Cunningham is setting a screen for one of his teammates to come off of, and the ball is ultimately going to find its way back to Cade. See, let action kind of flow through a little bit. Suns do a good job not breaking their shell, and now we get to them getting in the pick and roll, and you see Ryan Dunn obviously fighting over the screen with Cade Cunningham, happening in an empty corner. You see as he goes over the screen, what we're going to be starting to pay attention to is where Mason Plumlee is in terms of his drop coverage, but also watching how Ryan Dunn competes to get back into the play after he trails after navigating over the screen from Jalen Duren. So you see Cade Cunningham slows down just a little bit to create a bump and try to create separation as he gets below the free throw line, one of his patented moves, especially as he usually gets into floaters in this area of the floor. But watch how well the Suns do their job in terms of shrinking the floor and just making him feel extra bodies around, and then doing a solid job up to the contest point as well. And that's Kevin Durant coming from the backside, operating and showing some extra help in addition to obviously Ryan Dunn from the backside with his rear view contest and Mason Plumlee in a primary rim protection role. It's the little things like this from the Suns with getting into positions where they're able to provide extra help when need be, but also Ryan Dunn understanding, okay, I've done my job. He's broken the seal in terms of the free throw line and gotten below that. Now it's my teammates' job to do their job in terms of helping. And a credit also to Devin Booker at this still frame here, which is why I paused it, because Mason Plumlee can't comfortably put up the initial contest unless he's accounted for in terms of help to helper. So all around, the Suns do a great job as we talked about each position in terms of who's helping Ryan Dunn. After Cade Cunningham gets downhill, Kevin Durant gets the block, and then the Suns are going to end up conceding the offensive rebound, but it ultimately ends up in a stop for them. All right, here on the second play, we're going to be paying attention to Ryan Dunn to start the possession, and you're going to see how far up the court he's picking up Cade Cunningham and how this helps to work in the Suns' favor as they flow through their defense and just shrinking the clock, and how it's also going to play into them trying to send Cade Cunningham to specific pockets on the floor, ultimately to set the Suns up to stay in the advantage, but also to dictate to him rather than reacting to where he wants to go on the court. So great job there early in the possession, like I talked about, from Ryan Dunn, picking up 3/4 court, close to full court, and making Cade Cunningham work to bring the ball into action. And we're going to pay attention to this early flood rotation here from Mason Plumlee. Now, he's able to make this rotation because Kevin Durant has who the Suns deem as a non-shooter in Thompson in his weak side corner. And because he's spaced here specifically, it allows for them to kind of tilt the defense in favor of where the ball is and help to ultimately shrink the floor on Cade Cunningham. And as we take the cursor away, and then we watch how action kind of unfolds, you'll see where things kind of break down and the Suns end up finding themselves in some compromise. So Cade kind of lets the air breathe, resets the action as he's being pressured by Ryan Dunn. And now watch how, like I mentioned earlier in this possession, Mason Plumlee was flooding a strong side block. As soon as he decommits from that strong side block and he vacates is when Cade Cunningham ultimately drives downhill, and he's going to pick up a foul, But as we bring this back, you'll see why things timed up the way they did, and ultimately how he was able to steal back leverage and then ultimately start to dictate to the Suns. So paying attention to the ball first and looking at how Ryan Dunn is guarding Cade Cunningham, he's got him pinned to the sideline, essentially saying no middle in terms of him being able to drive to his right hand, his strong hand. This is called weak coverage. He's trying to keep the ball in his weak hand, but also keep him pinned to that outer third of the floor as much as he possibly can. Now, you can't defend this way if you don't have rim protection. That's why I mentioned Mason Plumlee being on that strong side block early in the possession. However, like we talked about, as soon as Mason Plumlee vacates is when Cade Cunningham times up the drive. Mason has to, because of where Kevin Durant is and who Kevin Durant is guarding, stay loaded to that strong side block, which is where the cursor is right now. Plumlee should still be here, and he should be resetting that 2.9 clock so that he doesn't get a 3-second call, but overloading to where he's showing a body that deters Cade from ever even going all the way to the point where he can get into the paint and get fouled here. So Mason has to do a better job executing because of who Kevin Durant is guarding, and because Kevin Durant can then ultimately step inside of who Mason Plumlee's guarding here and completely take that potential pass away. So the dominoes fall for the Suns early in the possession after they do a solid job initially with the look, and then Cade Cunningham does what he does as a superstar guard and finds his way to the free throw line. All right, and then on this rep, again, the ball's going to ultimately find itself in Cade Cunningham's hands, and this is where action starts. So we see, obviously, Ryan Dunn guarding the ball again. You're going to see him doing a solid job with his pick and roll navigation, but I want to pause it right here and bring the cursor back in and pay attention to where Nick Richards is in relation to where Cade Cunningham is. So we're talking a lot about drop coverage and where a lot of the Suns' big men like to stay in drop coverage in terms of where they're comfortable is around this area of the floor or lower. Anytime they have to venture out past this area of the floor is where things can kind of get murky, and it ultimately leaves that guard that's defending whoever it is that has the ball on essentially a 2-on-1 island, because the big is usually not high enough up the court to impact the person that's got the ball, whether they want to turn the corner and drive to the basket or find these pull-up pockets, which is what Cade Cunningham is going to do right here. This was something that plagued the Suns, which I show in screenshots in my Stevens notebook against the Cleveland Cavaliers, because Nick Richards, the Suns had him playing back here. Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, very comfortable pulling up for three in this pocket of the floor. Cade Cunningham, though not as efficient in doing so, is still effective in doing that. And we're going to see, because Nick Richards retreats a little bit too soon here, he's going to ultimately end up conceding that pull-up pocket. Ryan Dunn can't get back in with that review contest, and Cade Cunningham knocks down a three. So again, more full court coverage from Ryan Dunn. Again, spearheading all of the press defense for the Suns is him doing that to all of the primary ball handlers since he's gotten into the starting lineup. And then we're going to see that same scenario we just got done speaking to play out again. And flow into it a little bit differently. You get a little bit of action, and ultimately it's going to get back to that same scenario, just in a different pocket of the floor. And we're going to be watching Ryan Dunn again on ball, this time on the outer third of the floor. So like in the first possession, weakening Cade Cunningham, we're going to be seeing him do that again. Now watch that in relation to where Nick Richards is and how Nick Richards this time is going to step up and more effectively close that gap between where he is on the other side of the screen to where Cade Cunningham is ultimately going to be navigating to. Solid job. Now you see the difference in proximity. That space, imagine if you're Cade Cunningham, it feels a lot different here in this pocket than it did in the initial pocket that we talked about because of how close Nick Richards is. Again, it's just these little things. Cade Cunningham can definitely make that shot. He quite literally showed it on the last possession. But the Suns being better with their positioning and the cadence to their rotations and their defensive coverages helps to bridge the gap in terms of makes and misses and just generally keeping things in their favor. And then again, you see Ryan Dunn just kind of on the backside of Cade Cunningham all the way up the court. This is a little bit of Ryan Dunn being overzealous, but also Cade Cunningham still in the leverage and still in the pace of play and really trying to dictate to the Suns through the pressure that they're putting on them. Ryan Dunn ultimately fights back into position, and then watch what happens on defense from here. Now, this is an issue right here for me because they bled all of that time off of the shot clock. We talked about it on the first possession with Ryan Dunn picking up Cade Cunningham full court, how it bleeds away the shot clock, leaves the Pistons with less time to create advantages, which is ultimately what they want to do. It's just a war of possession time, and the Suns trying to do as much to shrink the clock and put pressure on the ball as much as they can. Conceding this switch right here just works to undo everything that you just worked to establish as an advantage in your defensive possession. I would like to see with Cade Cunningham specifically here from Ryan Dunn, things that I see from players like Amen Thompson down in Houston and players like Dyson Daniels over in Atlanta. When they're guarding these primary ball handlers and teams throwing these kind of pre-switches or pre-screens just to detach the primary ball handler that they don't want on their primary ball handler, just to detach them from that defender and put a weaker or a less effective defender into primary action, you're just kind of playing into their hands when you get to these points. So I would like to see the Suns allow for Ryan Dunn to be more intentional about not conceding these switches so easily. And ultimately, we talked about how well he stayed attached to Cade Cunningham. Watch how easily he breaks the leverage of Grayson Allen and ultimately able to put the Pistons in the advantage as he gets downhill into the soft touch floater. Now, yes, he missed that, but again, that's a shot that he can make easily, and that's a shot attempt that he wasn't able to get off as easily or as often when Ryan Dunn was the primary defender. And then you get to this possession here. Again, just kind of fluff action, gets the ball to Cade Cunningham, and then we see a very good switch here from Devin Booker with Ryan Dunn, keeping him again to his left hand, making sure he can't turn that corner to steal leverage. And then you're going to see as the dust settles on that action, Devin Booker doing a good job keeping Cade again to that left hand, gets back into position to deter a left-hand drive, again, keeping them from going to that middle third of the floor to break the nail. Ultimately, you see there's going to be a screen that comes into play. And again, we talk about the big and drop coverage. Nick Richards is a little late in terms of reacting to the ball. But again, these are shots that the Suns want Cade to be taking. And because they've done such a good job breaking his rhythm early in this game with the pressure and the activity and the pockets of the court that they're kind of forcing him into, this ends up working into their advantage as well. And then, excuse me for this one, the interviewing the fan, it's a little tougher to see, but work with me on it. So you see good pressure on the ball here from Tyus Jones. Again, forcing Cade Cunningham to his weak hand and weak coverage. You're going to see a little bit of help there from Royce O'Neal. He ultimately has to fade away as his man sinks into that strong side corner. Now watch the Suns' defense as they kind of flood the lane and ultimately make Cade Cunningham feel bodies and shrink the floor on him. Ultimately going to force him to pass it out to someone that they deem as a non-shooter from that area of the floor. And this is a shot that the Suns are going to live with because it's not Cade Cunningham shooting the ball. Great job executing to coverage from primary to also the secondary players, showing their help and also helping to flood the paint to make sure that he's not feeling comfortable down there. Next possession, Ryan Dunn back on him. And again, this is a little bit of what I was speaking to earlier, him not just switching these early actions, which is what the Pistons are hoping for. Does a good job navigating and a good job with Kevin Durant in terms of giving him space to gap and navigate that and go under that screen. Issue comes here, though. This is where Ryan Dunn has a little bit of growth that he still has to get into. He's going to get there, but it's going to take reps like the one that we see here where he gets burned to then break it down on film the next day and see, oh, I have to keep the airspace contained against Cade, because as soon as he feels that little bit of airspace is when he's ultimately going to be able to turn the corner. So we bring the cursor here, and we're going to see as Cade gets into action and ultimately gets the ball in his outer third. Right here, boom. This is where Ryan Dunn is making a mistake. It's this gap of space right here. He has to keep this airspace closed. In case he does have to navigate this screen, he can go over it instead of easily switching it and allowing him easy access to Kevin Durant on the other side. But also, he has to make sure that he's closing his airspace to make sure that he can't just go and get to the paint from this area of the court right here as well, because Grayson Allen has a 40%, over 40% catch and shoot three-point shooter, one of the best in the league, and Tim Hardaway Jr. right here. So this right here, this coverage from Grayson Allen, some teams call it like percentage for percentage, 60 or 50% committed to the passing lane or driving lane, but still 100% committed to the ball. So they're just there to show a body. They're not there to attempt to get a steal or to help over to deter a drive completely. They're just there to show a body. So getting back to the ball, This space conceded from Ryan Dunn is ultimately what Cade Cunningham is going to use to his favor, and we're going to see what happens from there. Cade breaks the contain, gets the leverage getting downhill, and he's able to get into a comfortable pickup point. And now one other fault from Ryan Dunn, in addition to him conceding that space, is that in these scenarios right here, because it's Nick Richards, who is the person that's rim protecting right here, his rim protection is different from how Oso Iguodala would go about doing it, as well as Yusuf Nurkic and Mason Plumlee. There's going to be a point to where he gets a relationship and understanding and trust that if he does get beat in these scenarios, he can funnel him directly to Nick Richards and trust that he'll be there to put good rim protection up in terms of verticality and ultimately keep them from fouling right here in this scenario. But because Ryan Dunn fights back into positioning, again, this is Nick Richards' first game, so there's no chemistry there. They're going to ultimately be getting tabbed with a foul here in a scenario where Nick Richards, if there was a veer off from Ryan Dunn in terms of just conceding the drive to Cade and allowing for Nick Richards to do his job as a rim protector, that kind of changes the scenario for the Suns, and what could have worked in their favor ultimately ends up being a foul. And then on this one, we see a good decision here because of the point of this screen from Ryan Dunn, just taking the fastest route to the ball and just meeting Cade Cunningham off of the under on the other side of the screen. Good job from Mason Plumlee showing help in that gap, but not fully committing to the ball to where he causes confusion in the pick and roll defense with Cade Cunningham. Ultimately allows for Ryan Dunn to compete back into action. And then you see Kevin Durant again with the non-shooter in that weak side or strong side corner, also showing gap help as well. Again, just making Cade Cunningham feel bodies. Ultimately is going to force up a contested floater, and this is a shot that the Suns will live with. Now they have to get that rebound, of course, but this is something that they live with in terms of the shot coming where it came from, and also with the multiple contestant bodies that Cade Cunningham is feeling around him. And then on this one, we see a Spain pick and roll rep from the Detroit Pistons, and we see Ryan Dunn doing a great job navigating that screen. A good job for Mason Plumlee timing up that help, and then allowing for Ryan Dunn to then get back into action. But as we look off ball, and not unlike the last rep that we just got done talking about with Kevin Durant, he has a non-shooter that he's guarding in that weak side corner. Now watch the way that he loads into the paint to ultimately help with the primary action as things kind of get muddy. So you get Kevin Durant right here. He's going to ultimately be the low man because action is going this direction. So keep your attention here as I take the cursor away, and watch the way that Kevin Durant's presence in all of this action helps to impact the ultimate shot that's taken and keeps the Sun in defensive advantage. So boom, right there, he steps inside of the roller as Mason Plumlee steps over to help Ryan Dunn. This is the helper timing in terms of the cadence that the Suns just have not had this season for multiple reasons. But when Kevin Durant is that low man, he helps with a lot of that. The timing and his size, in addition to that, matches with Jalen Duren as he rolls downhill. The Suns stay in defensive advantage. Shot gets funneled to a person again on their scouting report that's deemed a non-shooter. Advantage Suns is going to be a miss, and the Suns are out on the break. And then here on this one again with Ryan Dunn on the ball, you're going to see him doing a good job again, navigating the initial screen. Almost barely gets touched as he navigates it while keeping contact to the legal limit. Doing a great job there. And he's going to do a good job again navigating this next screen. And now watch Nick Richards and how he helps to keep things flooded to take away that look for Cade Cunningham. But again, lurking in the weeds is the low man on the opposite side of the action. We're going to see again here is Kevin Durant. And watch his relation to Nick Richards as he sees Nick Richards flood over to that strong side block like we talked about earlier with Mason Plumlee to shrink the floor on Cade Cunningham, but also to aid Ryan Dunn as he navigates over that screen to get back on the contact on Cade Cunningham. So watch these three defenders. Kevin Durant is the low man, Nick Richards is the drop coverage defender, and then obviously Ryan Dunn as he competes back in to get containment on Cade Cunningham. And you see Kevin Durant flooding over as the low man to take away the roller, gets a deflection. The Suns again are out on the break. And then one of the final reps here on this segment, we're going to be looking at Cade Cunningham. Again, this time in the fourth quarter, war of attrition is weighing down on him. At this point, he has no rhythm in terms of his pull-ups from the floor, especially outside of the paint. A majority of his points have come from the free throw line. And this is what you want from Ryan Dunn, being able to just make his opponents have to work for every possession that he's guarding them. And this is working in their favor as it did this entire game against Cade Cunningham. You see him do a great job again, weakening him, but also this is considered ice coverage, just sending him to his weak hand, but also funneling him down the sideline and towards where Nick Richards is. So a job well done from Ryan Dunn and his positioning in this action, especially late in the game, to take away pockets of the floor for Cade Cunningham to navigate to. Great job as well from Nick Richards being in position as a defender guarding a screener. Ryan Dunn says absolutely no to Cade Cunningham as he tries to navigate to the middle, ultimately forces him back to his left hand. And now watch the way that Ryan Dunn just competes and how he stays connected to the ball all the way downhill. Ultimately, he's going to get thrown off balance. This is a good separation move from Cade Cunningham. But again, because his rhythm has been broken, this shot ultimately ends up working in favor of the Suns, and they end up getting a timely stop at the end of this game.
We all silly like the mayor.